Welcome back, everybody, to True Talk with TruMotion, where a couple of guys talk about how to make the world a better place and hopefully make your day a little bit better in the process. My name is Mark, followed by my co-host, Steven. Let's get things kicked off. Well, Steve and I were talking earlier about, hey, like, what should we talk about today? And I honestly have been like a little scatterbrained lately because a lot of unexpected things have been kind of thrown into my world that were not anticipated. So we're like, let's talk about when life throws you curveballs. Curveballs meaning things that aren't going according to plan. So we all have those situations in life where we're like, man, we're rocking, we're rolling, and then all of a sudden, bam, life hits us in the face, whether it be we get a speeding ticket or we get injured or there's a death in the family or something happens, something that's unexpected and you can't anticipate it. Those are curveballs. Okay. We always have curveballs in life. And how do we learn how to deal with those? Because I mean, everybody can tell you their own version on how to deal with it, but nobody's really kind of ever sat through and talked about like, okay, well, when this happens, these are the things that you want to try to focus on and control. Like the easy answer to say, not necessarily to do, the easy answer is, well, control the things you can and not worry about the things you can. That sounds great in theory, but for us normal people, we tend to fixate on the things we have no control over. So how do we get to that point to where we can relax and not worry about the things that are completely out of our control? So, I mean, like I said, I know for me personally, I've been dealing with a couple of things that have been unexpected, but like, I don't know, Steven, have you ever had something where you're just like, man, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden something, life smacks you in the face and you're like, oh, okay, that was unexpected.
Yeah, it's those Icarus moments where you're like, everything seems to be flying high, and then suddenly your wings fall off, and then you realize
flying too close to that sun.
Yeah. I think, no, that definitely happens to everybody, and I'm glad we're addressing this. Just as a side note, none of us had a topic, so that's a curveball for both of us today. So This is where we're at, and this is where we're going with it. I think if and I know this is like retroactive, right? But the old saying, an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. Like, try to be aware of everything that's potentially can happen and have some sort of plan for it. One of the things that really threw me a curveball was several years ago, I didn't wreck my car, but my car decided to, stop being a car that can turn on. A very PC way to put it. It killed itself. And that was a curveball for me, but I realized looking back, it's because was I up to date on its maintenance? Was I aware of certain things that were happening? So having things jump up, right, and just slap you in the face, like, if that happens, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but sometimes there's signs. So it's being aware of what potentially could happen from this, and maybe having a bit of that perception or that what can happen from where I'm at right now. No,
I definitely agree with you in terms of there are always signs on things that could or could not happen. Like, for instance, the situation I'm dealing with, I mean, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but there were signs that were like, hey, this is going to be a messy situation. But even though those signs are there, there's no way to prevent it from happening. So it's like, oh, dang, like, it was like, oh, we can see it happening, but we can't stop it. Oh, God, what do we do? And it's like, well, you just kind of do your best to roll with it and, just kind of, not get too involved emotionally and just be like, okay, well, this is what we can do. Mm-hmm. And if we can't do more than that, then we'll find other ways of being able to go through that situation. But it's very interesting because I do agree, because car problems are probably the easiest curveball people deal with. I mean, so that was a great example. And yeah, when it comes to car problems, I mean, yeah, you can do your best to maintain your car, put good gas in it, get regular maintenance on it. But eventually car parts wear out and they break. So it's like when you've done all you can do and stuff still happens, that's when your true character, I believe, kind of gets tested. So are you going to melt and just crumble under the pressure and just be like, oh, why is it? Why me? Why me? That whole victim mentality. I notice that a lot when things don't go people's way. They always say, why me? And I can't remember who said it, but it makes complete sense. And when you start looking at life and when you start, instead of saying, why me, you need to start saying it's for me. Huh. And life is for you, not why me.
I think a very popular statement is life doesn't happen to us. Yeah, life happens for us.
Exactly. That's kind of this. I believe that's kind of the same thing. Yeah. So you can look at these situations one of two ways. You can look at them as a negative victim mentality where it's like, oh, nothing ever good happens to me. This sort of stuff always happens to me. I mean, we've all had people that we've talked with where it seems like anytime you talk to them, you're like, oh my gosh, I need like an emotional cleansing because everything bad is going on with them. Yeah. I don't want that funk to like spread onto me. And then you have people that you talk to where you're like, dang, I just feel like I got to recharge because even all these bad things that are happening to them, like, doesn't affect them one single bit. So the biggest things to think about when you're thinking about curveballs in life is, again, are you doing the steps to prevent a possible curveball being thrown at you? Hopefully we are, because, I mean, one of the reasons why we're doing this and one of the reasons why we, train and teach martial arts is to build better people. And building better people is like becoming the best version of yourself. And you can't become the best version of yourself without doing daily maintenance.
Overcoming some obstacles.
Exactly. I mean, everybody has problems. Everybody has problems. I don't care if you're rich, you're poor, you're tall, you're short, you're skinny, you're fat, you're a boy, you're a girl, whatever. Everybody has problems. But it's how we're able to deal and adapt to these problems that really kind of pave the way for how we deal with life. And if our life is going to be successful and happy, or if it's going to be rocky and hard and like kind of depressing. I mean, that's just the honest truth. I mean, when you go through difficult situations, you come out stronger in the end, hence becoming a better version of yourself. So if we try to avoid these curveballs, we're really doing ourselves a disservice by not becoming a better version of ourselves. So when we think of what we can control and what we can't control, it's literally that easy and that hard. Because we all have an understanding of what our limitations are and what we can and can't do. And then we also have an idea of what we have no ability to control over. And like one of the biggest things is we can't control other people. So the biggest thing that I do when we're being confronted with a situation is, okay, whatever they're doing, I have to take out of the equation because I can't control them and I'm not them. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing I can do is control my emotions and my attitude. So I can either have a positive outlook on it or I could have a negative outlook on it. Sometimes the negative outlook overtakes us and all of a sudden you're just like, you're angry and you're crabby and then you're just like, what is going on? And you have to do a reset and be like, okay, you know what? I was looking at this pretty negatively. I was having a bad attitude. That's got to change. Let's take a step back. Let's attack it from a different angle. And then hopefully you can see things a little bit differently because you're looking at it with different eyes. So I have you ever noticed anything like that where you're just like, you're confronted with the situation, you just have like a bad attitude about it and it never gets better. And then when you take a step back and you change your attitude, it's like, holy cow, this is way different than it first started out being. I mean, I don't know if that's something that you've ever experienced.
Every time, yeah, that's something that I think we can all work on, because every time that I've run into something that's I knew was out of my hands, let's say getting pulled over or something, it's like you just got to stop. You got to just take a deep breath. You're like, okay, this is how it is.
Yeah.
Usually also eat something if you're in that headspace, because you probably need some food. That definitely changes your attitude, your outlook.
That is true. I mean, most people want to think of something like that, but making sure you're fed and you're not hangry as well.
It sneaks up on you, definitely.
Yeah, that is
definitely
true.
If you haven't had like a good warm meal, good hot meal, and you're trying to make these decisions, or you're being confronted by this new information, and just it'll change your perspective. That, and then taking a walk, like taking a step back, doing some exercise, coming back to the situation, you realize it's not as monumentous. It's not the mountain that you're making it out to be. It's more of the molehill.
No, I think that's extremely true as well. That taking a step away, and like you said, going on a walk, or kind of getting a sweat in, doing something that'll distract you from what the problem is. So then when you come back to it, you're in a different headspace. And again, just like what Stephen was saying, most of the time, it's really not that big a deal that we were making it out to be in the first place. It's that, we made mountains out of molehills, just like you said. And it's like, okay, well, what are some preventative things we can do to make sure that doesn't happen, to where we don't overreact like that? And that's where I think just like the whole daily maintenance that Stephen was talking about earlier, and having things that you like to do. Like, I mean, we get to teach and do martial arts here. So for us, it's the act of either doing or teaching class. I mean, when you're doing or teaching class, you don't have time to think about anything else. Like, one of the things I've always tried to make sure I tell with the students, it's like, if you have problems, either leave them at the door or bring them in to solve. Because if you leave them at the door, by the time you go back out to whatever that problem is, most of the time you've forgotten it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a problem anymore. Or if you bring it in with you, it's like, we're going to get it resolved. So by the time you leave, it's not a problem anymore. So those are some things that, at least when you're thinking of problems, do you want to solve them, or do you just want to bury your head in the sand with them? Okay. If you want to bury your head in the sand with them, that's like where you need to go on a walk. Leave it alone for a little bit, and then come back to it in an hour or two, and then be like, okay, what is really going on here? And then that's when you can be like, okay, things are not so bad, or okay, that's pretty bad, but I have no control over it, so I've got to learn to let that go. Or, man, this is getting worse. I can see the direction this is heading. How can I cut it off to where it doesn't become more of an issue? Those are really big things. I mean, and that sort of thing is like, well, when we're talking about life throwing as curveballs, if you've ever played baseball, when someone throws you a curveball, you have to sit and wait on it. Because most of the time you'll either you'll dive out of the box because you think it's going to hit you, or you're way out in front of it. But if you can see that curveball coming, you sit on it, and then usually that's when you drive it into the third deck. Okay. Because curveballs aren't very fast. They just change direction. Okay. So when we're confronted with problems and we can see it coming, that's that batter where you're sitting back on it and you're just waiting to knock that sucker out of the park. So when you can see something going in a certain direction, it's basically your obligation to head it off before it becomes more of an issue. And sometimes that's having an uncomfortable conversation with somebody you care about. Are you willing to have those uncomfortable conversations so they don't become problems later? Hopefully the answer is yes, but sometimes the answer is no, because you're like, oh, things are going well right now. I don't want to rock the boat. And I don't want to appear mean or anything like that. But it's like, no, as long as you're coming at them with the intention of caring and love, you're not trying to do things to hurt somebody. This is something we were talking about the other day too when it comes to teaching. As long as the students know you care about them, like honestly, they'll be willing to put up with just about anything. But you have to truly care when you're trying to help somebody else. So, like, I don't know, have you ever had that where somebody's told you something and it's like, oh my gosh, that was really hard to hear, but yet the person that told it to me, you're like, I know they truly care about me, and I know that was probably difficult for them. And then you've had something hard to hear, and the person that's told you has been kind of a jerk, and they just want to say things to make themselves sound superior. Like, have you ever dealt with those, and have you ever experienced those two before?
Yeah, I have. I don't have any specific examples, but yeah, there's something very much like having that sense, or that hearing a word of correction is not necessarily pleasant to hear. It's not like, oh, it's not like sweet, or, and it doesn't make me happy or laugh, but it's like, oh, this person like truly wants me to do better, and truly wants to see me do better. So they're saying these things to help me do better. And that in turn can be done well, or it can be done poorly. Mm-hmm. Like how you were mentioning, like there's been times when people have said something what they thought would be helpful, mm-hmm. but it turns out it's like, oh, you're just coming across as a jerk.
Yeah.
You're just coming across as from a position of your knowledge, you know? It's like you're talking down to me.
Yeah.
Rather than trying to build me up. No,
and honestly, somebody that's really good at that is Master Linton and Master Martin. I know Master Linton and I have had conversations where I know that they've probably been very difficult for him. And I know they've been difficult for me to hear. But at the same time, like, I know he's coming at it with he cares about me and he cares about my future. And I've heard similar conversations from friends where they're just trying to sound superior. Mm-hmm. And you're just like, you have to call out those people and be like, dude, are you just talking to me because you want to help me? Or are you trying to talk to me because you want to sound like you're doing better than me?
Yeah.
Like, what? I don't understand, like, what's going on here. So anytime you're trying to deal with a curveball or trying to prevent a curveball from happening, and you have to have those uncomfortable conversations, I encourage you to have them, but have them with the intention of truly caring about the person. Because if you don't truly care about the person, then don't have that conversation. But if you truly care about the person that you're trying to help, they may not want to hear it at the time, but yet they'll listen, and then hopefully eventually it'll sink in.
They may not know that you truly care, and then it might be something they don't get the first time.
Yes.
But it changes their opinion of you.
Exactly. And it's never too late of an opportunity to do something right. Okay. I think that's something that's kind of unfortunately lacking in society, is people willing and wanting to do the right thing, and doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing. Okay. Because I don't know if you've seen it online or on Instagram or whatever. These influencers, they'll go to like McDonald's and they'll buy like 100 Big Macs or whatever, and they'll go around and passing them out to homeless people. I think it's great. I mean, they're trying to do a service, but yet, are they truly doing the service, or are they doing the service for recognition because they have to put that out there on social media? Okay, or I've seen people where they like go up to homeless people and they're like, here's $1,000, or like, hey, what do you need? I'll go buy it for you. And it's like, again, like, man, that's awesome. I'm glad to see people out there willing to help and serve other people. But why do you got to post it online? Mm-hmm. Are you benefiting from that? Because if you're benefiting from that, then is that a good deed? Is that good works? I would tend to question that. Now, at the same time, it's like there's nothing wrong with being compensated for like helping people. But again, it's like if you're doing these things, but you got to show everybody that you're doing it. I tend to question people's motives with that. I don't know if you've ever seen those things online but yeah, I don't know. For some reason that it doesn't strike me as genuine. It's because it's like if it was genuine, nobody would know. It'd be like that whole anonymous donation.
Right.
Or like you wouldn't have a camera following you while you're doing it.
Right. It'd
just be like, hey, here's $100, dude. And you carry on with your day. Not like, hey, come tell us about your story on my Instagram page or whatever. And then, make people feel sad. And then, I'm the righteous white knight riding in on a horse, saving you and this and that. I don't know. It doesn't feel genuine to me.
It's definitely a curveball for the person receiving that spontaneous service. It's also kind of weird if a camera shoved in their face, watching them eat that Big Mac.
Exactly.
It's like, hey, look at me. I'm feeding this person. The person's like, hey, I'm just trying to eat here.
Just trying to eat, buddy. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I'm not sure necessarily. I would say still do it because it's still, I think the benefit of helping someone else is by far the greatest thing.
Yeah, you always want to find a reason to help somebody.
But also, it's like you have to ask yourself that question, like you just mentioned, and I'm just repeating. It's like you're getting a reward. You're getting a reward by helping somebody, and then that pays internally. That pays in your soul.
Yeah.
When you try to monetize it or post it, then that's paying your ego. That's not paying your soul.
No, I would tend to agree with that. I mean, because we all try to do things to help other people. And I think it was yesterday we were having this conversation of like, the more you give yourself into other people, indirectly, you get exactly what you need back. And they may or may not know that they're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're coming at it from that pure perspective of my whole goal is to help these people. If that's your goal, well, in turn, those people turn around and help you back unintentionally.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, going back to that whole curveball, when life tends to throw weird things at you, the best thing you can do is hold your stance, hold that ground, sit back and wait on it. Because if we dive out of the box when curveballs get thrown at us, man, we never truly know what we're really capable of. They're character testers for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like it tests our character, it tests our grit, it tests our mental fortitude. It tests us in ways that we never thought we needed to be tested or should be tested. But yet, when you stand in the box and you wait for it to curve into that strike zone, when you see it, man, there's no curveball that you can't just hit 450 feet up into the stands.
Yeah.
But you got to learn how to sit in the box. You got to learn how to take it, and you got to learn how to deal with them. Some curveballs we don't want to deal with, and those are the curveballs we need to deal with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just an interesting kind of topic we were thinking about today was, hey man, when things are going good and all of a sudden some, like, for lack of a better term, punches you right in the face, like, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
That's why we love sparring. Sparring's the greatest metaphor for life. Why? Because you have to be present at all times. And if you're not present, you get punched in the face. You try something, it either works or you get punched in the face. When you get punched in the face, if you're getting tired of getting punched in the face, you are forced to change or do something. Yep. That's the glorious thing about sparring. So sparring, if you've never had the opportunity to do so with a good group of people, I highly recommend it. Okay. It is a great metaphor for life. It is a great workout. It's a great ego checker. Okay. Because again, speaking of curveballs, You could come into a sparring match being like, okay, I'm going to do this. If they throw a punch, I'm going to like parry block it to the side and then kick him in the groin and then punch him in the face and then take him down and then put him in a headlock. And then the dude kicks you. And you're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that.
That's not scripted.
Yeah, exactly. So don't shy away when life throws you curveballs. Don't shy away when life hands you problems. Stand firm. Stand strong. Be courageous. Show courage. Show character. You know, with the 7 rules of Bushido that we try to follow here at the dojo, you know, have some respect. Show some integrity. Have heroic courage. You know, show some honor. Be compassionate at the same time. You know, those are 5 out of the 7. And I think all of them can be relatable to when life punches you in the face. Okay. So don't ever feel like you're a certain way if life tends to knock you down. No, it's that whole other, you know, saying, you know, you get knocked down 7 times, you get back up 8 times, you know. Nobody cares if you get knocked down. We really only care if you get back up. Okay. So don't count how many times you've been knocked down. Worry about how many times you get back up. Okay. So any kind of closing remarks, Stephen?
I was hoping to get a bit of insight on how we can better, or maybe some ideas, or how we're currently helping our students with curveballs. Because I know every time I've gone to a test, every time I've tested, it's never been inside the box. It's always been something they try to mess you up, so you know, they try to get into your head. And as an instructor now, I know exactly why.
Yes.
Is because I want my students to be present and in the moment, so they know exactly like what they need to do.
Yes. No, Stephen brings up a good point. When we try to instill that ability to deal with adversity when it comes to training in our students, it's you purposely throw curveballs at them to see how they react to them. Tests are a great way to see what will really happen to people, because they're a little stressful, they're pretty chaotic, there's all sorts of moving parts, you have to really pay attention. And yeah, exactly like what Steven said, it's like we purposely try to mess you up to see how you react. Some people start crying. Some people are like, you know, throw their hands up in the air and try to quit. Some people cower away because they don't want to get hurt or they don't want to get pointed out. And some people just stand there and they're like, yep, that sucked. Let's not do that again. And they really intentionally try not to have that happen again. So when it comes to training and having to deal with that better, you have to find a scenario where people purposely throw curveballs at you. We do it all the time very subtly in classes by adding variables. So maybe it's like, okay, usually we practice against somebody coming in with 1 punch for practicing. Like, hey, today someone's coming in with 2 punches. That's a curveball. Or, hey, somebody's coming in and trying to kick you. How do you deal with someone trying to kick you? That's a curveball. Or, hey, now you got 2 opponents. That's a curveball. So when we try to, that's again, kind of like what we were saying earlier. That's why I truly love the training aspect of martial arts, because it teaches you how to deal with adversity unintentionally, because we're working on constantly improving and constantly bettering ourselves with these adversity thrown into it, you know, because another saying, you know, like calm seas don't make good sailors. You know, you've got to find ways to allow yourselves to screw up, because then you're like, okay, that didn't work. Now we got to figure out why it didn't work and then hit it again so we can correct that behavior in a controlled manner. Versus in reality, when things don't go well, that's very scary, because it could cost you money. It could cost you a job. It could cost you a relationship. I mean, there's all sorts of permanent things that could happen, but yet we practice those things all the time in the dojo, because we know it's not going to be a serious issue. So not a problem. So when you think about curveballs, that's what we want to think of, is how we deal with them. So, but we've got some people coming in, so we're going to call this podcast short. But thank you for joining us, and make sure to kick it back with us next time, because we'll have a special guest interview on the next episode.
There we go. Before we leave, we are also now on Spotify. If you're used to watching us on YouTube, join us on Spotify and other places where you may find your podcasts. Take care, everybody. Kick it with us next week.
Thank you very much.